And we are live. Good day, everyone. I am Dana the Angry Citizen coming to you live on it is May 7th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I have a couple of guests that I'm going to bring out. My primary guest, a lot of you know him. I've interviewed him before. We've talked together many times. He does podcasts. He is an amazing man who is absolutely dedicated and passionate to his cause. And I'm thrilled to have him as a friend and an ally. You know him as Scott Schara, and I know him, and most people know him as Grace's dad, which he proudly embraces. This is his daughter, the beautiful, there we go, Grace. And the summary of what happened to this young lady is she was, in essence, kidnapped and murdered in a so-called hospital, and this is a difficult thing for me to talk about. I'm a father and a grandfather, and to think of what happened to her really makes me rage. I start to really get angry. So I apologize for that. Sometimes I swear a little, try not to do that. Apologize if I do. But when we start talking about things like this, it really gets me worked up. So be aware of that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him in and welcome him. Please, everyone, welcome the amazing Scott Schara. Scott, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Well, putting amazing in front of my name is not true. If you want proof of that, just ask my wife. But
Yeah,
anyway, I'm here and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you're my friend, Dana.
thank you. I trust your wife's judgment, but I'm going to go ahead and just stand by my assessment. I'm pretty sure if we take a poll, we're going to find that it's a universal assessment. We're going to ask our co-guest when he comes in about that and see what he has to say. I'm sure he'll have some words for you, so I can't wait to hear that.
That sounds good.
I just want to briefly touch base on what happened. The reason why I assume that people who are viewing us probably are aware of what happened to you and what happened to Grace in the hospital. But I just want to briefly say these are my words. They're not Scott's words. If you want to know what Scott has to say, the timeline, anything, you go to his website and it's right there. There's no hiding it. So you go to ouramazinggrace.net. You can look at all the information Scott has compiled. It is compelling. It is truthful. I have said many times, and I continue to say, the truth is the sword of God. It is so powerful. And the truth about what happened to this young lady is her parents brought her to a so-called hospital to get care for her because she was sick. She was not sick to the point where they were feeling it was catastrophic, but rather that they thought it would be prudent to employ some healthcare professional and get some advice and encouragement and assistance. They were met with oppression, hostility, belligerence, a obvious concerted effort on the part of all these people to implement specific procedures, regardless of the condition of the patient. They attempted to and were eventually successful at isolating her, so there was no one there to advocate for her. They posted an armed guard in front of the room to threaten and intimidate Scott so that he would be less capable. And in their view, in my opinion, they wanted to make sure that he was no longer allowed to participate in the decisions regarding her health care, which they were unfortunately eventually successful at doing. Grace died and, in my opinion, was murdered, and I believe the evidence backs me up. We will find out. Scott is embroiled in a pretty significant so-called legal battle, which Paul and I were just talking a moment ago about, and I dare to hope that you will find justice in that, because your justice is mine. I have said this many times. His daughter is my daughter. If they can murder her, they can murder my daughter or yours. So you need to pay attention to this, America, and you need to get behind this man and help him, and you need to loudly demand justice. So, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit toward the end of the podcast, because I have a few letters I'm writing to a few people about a lot of things, and some of them concern some of my friends, and all I'm doing is stating my opinion, which I'm allowed to do because I'm an American. I can say what I want, and you may listen or not as you choose. These people will listen, because enough of us are going to get together and we're going to demand that they listen, and they will have to listen to us, because we will be so many and they will be so few. So I want justice, and I want transparency, and I want the people that did this to pay the appropriate price. And as Scott knows, I'm committed to that. So having said all of that, I now am going to throw the baton over to you, Scott. I would like to know what's the latest with you. I've kept up with you as much as I can. I'm on your news mailing list, rather. So I'm getting your emails. I review them. I do look at your interviews. I always love watching you talk to people. You have a very persuasive and genuine and sincere manner that I enjoy, and I'm really glad to see you so incredibly active. And I know you're fond of saying, well, Grace died for a reason, and you've learned what you've learned, and you are the man you are now, largely because of what happened to you. But still, brother, it tears my heart out, and I'm so sorry for what happened to you. There's no excuse.
Well, it tears my heart out too. Yeah, just a quick overview of the armed guard situation. I want to make sure that everybody understands what happened. I was with Grace. So we took Grace to the hospital because of our fear. We had bought into the COVID propaganda. If I would have never taken Grace to the hospital, she'd be alive today. And that's by far and away my most important message. God gave us he did not give us a spirit of fear. And when we get tempted by that satanic fear, we are called to go opposite. And I didn't. I submitted to the fear, and ultimately Grace is not alive today because of that. That's my piece of the equation. That does not excuse the hospital, the staff, or any of the people involved with her murder. But my piece of the equation is the fear motivated me to take Grace to the hospital. She just had a cold, whatever it was. Of course they diagnosed it as COVID for the money, but whatever she had, it didn't require a hospital stay. But we went along with the recommendation,
right?
Because it just seemed to be prudent. Anyway, yeah, I was with Grace from the 6th until the 10th of October, 2021. I was taken out by an armed guard. And so you referenced the armed guard. So the armed guard, the nurse came in on the morning of the 10th. The armed guard escorted me out to the truck. Ultimately, we had 47 hours then without advocacy. We had to hire an attorney to get an advocate in the room with Grace, which was my daughter, Jessica. My wife, Cindy, couldn't do it at the time because she was really sick. Anyway, the next guard came into play the last minutes of Grace's life. So at this point, the reason I call Grace's death murder is because she was doing fine in the morning of October 13th, and they used a combination of meds that you don't give to anybody unless your goal is to euthanize them. And those meds were Precedex, lorazepam, and morphine. They combined those meds in 29 minutes. And when it came time to revive Grace, this is where the second guard comes into play. He was posted outside the room. We don't know if he was armed or not because my daughter Jessica doesn't remember. But there was a guard posted outside the room, and we presumed to not allow me to come in. I was at home because I didn't know anything was happening. But when it came time to revive Grace, now my wife Cindy and I were on a FaceTime call with Jess because she was panicking. And we were screaming to the nurses to come in and save her. And the guard was outside the room, the nurses outside the room, and they hollered back from outside the room, "She's DNR, do not resuscitate." And we screamed, "She's not DNR, save our daughter." And no medical nurse or doctor came in the room after they administered morphine at 6:15 that evening. And we watched Grace die at 7:27. An hour and 15 minutes later, we watched her die in a FaceTime call with no doctor or nurse coming in to revive Grace. So, it was obvious to me, especially after getting the records, it was obvious that that was their intention. And they murdered her. Our lawsuit is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. Eventually, I'm hoping that we parlay this into a criminal case. And parlay isn't the right word, but you get the idea. We to get ready for a civil case is intense. We have, starting next week, Tuesday, through the following Thursday, we have depositions back to back. So we're in the discovery phase right now. We've already gone through interrogatories. Our family will get deposed next week, then the doctors and nurses the following week. And, we're looking forward to that. That will be a major piece of preparation for the trial. The jury trial is November 4th. Just take a major step back because people don't understand anything about the court system.
Correct.
I thought I knew a fair amount because I've been in business for 30 years and I've been sued a couple of times. And, I realized that the system is not in pursuit of the truth, but I did not realize it was an antichrist system, and it is not where you get justice. So then the logical question is, why are we even doing this then? And the answer to that question is multiple. We're doing this to shed light on evil. We have a chance because of this being one, the only national case where we have a common law medical battery claim. So we should be getting national attention to this case. And assuming we do, we have a chance to really shed light on evil, and not just the evil in the medical system, the evil in the court system. And what I mean by that is when you look at what barriers they put in place before COVID, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So first of all, they call it medical malpractice. Well, that really is a misnomer, because medical malpractice means negligence. The doctor made a mistake, which there are legitimate mistakes.
Right.
But there's no statute for what about when it's not a mistake. So we ended up getting, praise God that we have a common law battery case to take it outside of the state statute. So the state statute says you only can sue for medical malpractice. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is you have to bring the lawsuit within 3 years for the statute of limitations. Okay, well, I mean, 3 years goes by pretty quick because
yes,
you've got to get all the records. You've got to hire a legal team to analyze it. Then you got to go, 3 years is not a long time period.
right.
Then the limitation on the liability is $750,000. So the best case scenario with a medical malpractice case is $750,000. All right, so that's maybe sounds like a lot of money to people, but it's hardly anything, because the state statute also says the most the attorney can take is 1/3. And the out of pocket for a typical medical malpractice case is $250,000. So that only covers the attorney's bill.
Right.
They didn't, the experts, everything, and the odds of winning. I talked with the best medical malpractice attorney in Wisconsin. I never thought we'd file, but we promised God that whatever doors he opened, we'd walk through. And this door opened up. So we're doing it. But the best medical malpractice attorney in Wisconsin told me, he said, Scott, even in slam dunk cases like this appears to be, you only have a 1 in 10 chance of winning. I said, how is that? What do you mean by that?
Insane.
Said, they circle the wagons around their own.
Yep.
And so he said, let me share a case with you so you understand. He said, I represented a family where the dad lost his life because the doctor sewed up a sponge inside of him during a surgery, and we lost that case. Well, I said, how is it possible? He said, I brought in 10 experts, and the cabal, in this case, Ascension Hospital System, which has $30 billion in cash, they brought in 100 experts.
Yep.
So, they overwhelmed the jury with lying.
Right.
And so they lost the case. So this is why no attorneys take on the case.
Right.
Thankfully, God set us up for a time such as this, and we're able to fund the case, and we're going all the way. And these cases, they all settle, because if the attorney's taking it on a percentage, they can't afford to take the case to trial. It's too expensive. Just the trial, Dana, just the trial it costs us $240,000 for the trial. Okay, so that's why these cases never go to trial. So then if there is a medical malpractice case, they settle before the trial, and then there's a hush agreement. So you can't talk about it.
Right.
Well, I mean, thankfully, I'm as outspoken as they come, I suppose.
I've
And
noticed that about you. Yeah.
and the legal team has been fine with everything. The only caution they gave me is once we do depositions, because the depositions will all be videotaped. They said, you're going to have access to all this stuff, and we know how outspoken you are. Just don't give our strategy away. So that's my only
That seems
restriction.
wise. I want to touch on something quickly because you mentioned a couple things when you began speaking that are important for America to know, and a lot of Americans still are not aware of these things. During the so-called COVID epidemic, hospitals were given money for specific things. In other words, if you as a hospital decided you would do this thing, one of them was putting people on ventilators. If you put someone on a ventilator, it's worth what, 15 grand?
It
Scott,
was
do you remember?
actually, yeah, I do remember. It's
Okay.
way bigger than what people think. So
Okay. So my point is that they were given money. This wasn't, okay, the doctor decided this is what needs to be done. And he, in his professional judgment, then goes, here, let's do this because the patient needs to have it happen. They did it because they got paid to do it. And the death rate of people that were put on ventilators was, to my knowledge, as close to 100% as you can get. I don't know if anyone ever got put on a ventilator and then subsequently recovered. I'm fairly certain that once you got on the ventilator, your chance of coming back was pretty well zero. So that is a fact. And I'm not going to go into details and so forth with people. If, as I say, as all truth speakers say, I'm saying to you right now, if you doubt me, you prove me wrong, because I know I'm right. I've done my research into this. They did get paid. They got paid for giving certain kinds of medications. They got paid for a COVID diagnosis. And the very first thing I said when this whole COVID thing started, I said this, which I consider to be very fair and reasonable. If this virus exists, prove it. I want you to prove it. I want you to show me the science as to exactly how you can tell me with 100% certainty that that virus exists in that person's body. Number two, you need to prove that it causes sickness. Prove to me that the reason why a person is coughing and sneezing is because that virus is present in their body. And three, you need to prove to me beyond any doubt that it's contagious. I want you to show me the actual evidence. How did you prove that a person can have this virus and it can transmit itself over to another person? And all these things seem to me to be very reasonable, but none of those things were established. Look into it. Not going to go into details. I'm just telling you. So Scott is talking about
you're right.
Hospitals being paid. They were paid to do these things.
No, you're right. I mean, and assuming that they could prove all those things that you said, that still doesn't give them the license that they used during COVID.
Thank you.
Because what they did is first they lied about all three of those things, but then they used that lie as the excuse to override the patient.
Yep.
And so they were putting people on remdesivir and ventilators. Grace was never on either one. And the financial repercussions to the hospital, this was the first time in history that the government paid hospitals directly to kill people. Previously,
taxpayer money. Taxpayer money, America. That was your money, was paid to those hospitals to do these things. This is a fact. Okay. So, and I definitely
they've been doing it under the table. And they really caught us because we let it happen.
Yes.
And so how they've done it under the table before is through what's called standards of care. So standards of care are written by Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and the standards of care cover every medical facility that accepts Medicare and Medicaid, and it applies to 100% of their patient population, whether or not they're on Medicare or Medicaid. These standards of care are designed to hasten death, and hastening death is murder. Yep. So that's how they got us before. With COVID, COVID opened up the direct pay. And so they lied about this pandemic. And so then that gave the excuse that they used to implement all this. And and when you take it down to the nitty gritty, I'm just going to read from one of the slides I have here, Dana. Actually, I'll pull the slide up so everybody can see it.
Okay.
Because this is mind-blowing stuff. Okay, share.
Are you able to share your screen?
I'm going to try.
Okay, let me know if it doesn't work.
We'll see how it works here.
And I want to touch on one more thing, and then we're going to bring in our the other guest who's been waiting in the wings very patiently.
All right, so this is I just did a long monocast and I've become a full-time researcher advocate. I have about 3,500 hours of research in now.
Yep.
And I took the highlights of all my research 2 weeks ago and recorded a monocast
Nice.
that's called, let me just look at the title. It's Medical.
Okay.
I'll just pull up the title slide here first. Eugenics Today, Hospitals and Care Facilities are Federally Mandated Killing Fields. So you can find this whole presentation on my Rumble channel, but I want to hit this quick slide. Oh, shoot. I just moved. All right. So this slide, I'm in the bottom right-hand corner, Dana.
Yep.
Okay. So when we have tried to skin this cat so many different ways. And one of the ways is we hired a separate attorney to see if we could get the district attorney to file a criminal case against the doctor. Okay. So this is a clip out of the response letter from the district attorney written July 26th of 2023. This is where you see something like this. And have you ever gotten embarrassed for another person because they're so stupid?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's where this fits. This district attorney is so stupid. This is what they wrote. And I'm not joking. I don't like to use the word stupid, but I mean, this is really dumb.
The shoe fits.
A doctor is not required to administer treatment she or he believes is not medically effective. This includes authorizing a DNR. The parties clearly had a dispute about how Dr. Schara should treat Grace. Dr. Schara did not abide by the wishes of the family. They're acknowledging all of this.
Wow.
However, there is no law in Wisconsin that requires him to do so.
Wow.
I mean, that is so mind-blowing. That's why it's in my highlight clips, because this is one of the, I have 26 or 24 slides here, but not 25.
Okay.
It just gets beyond what, people think, well, we've got informed consent, right? Well, you don't have informed consent. If you look at the bottom left, on December 21st of 23, our Health and Human Services Department repealed informed consent. And in right in the middle, I'll just cover this, and I know you have a question, Dana. In our first motion to dismiss, which happened on July 14th, so we filed our lawsuit on April 11th, 23, July 14th, the first motion to dismiss. This is again embarrassing for the attorney who wrote it. So one of the attorneys for the defense tried to convince the judge to throw out the case because we're not going to have any doctors that practice in Wisconsin if you let these type of cases go through.
Yeah,
So
wouldn't want that. They'd all quit right away, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, look at what he wrote. The legislature's purpose in enacting a statutory scheme to govern claims for damages arising out of alleged medical negligence was to encourage healthcare providers to remain in Wisconsin by imposing certain limits on the causes of action that a patient or her family can pursue and the types and amount of damages that can be recovered.
Yep.
A lot of judges would have thrown our case out based on this foolish.
Right. Yeah, we wouldn't want people getting upset because they're being held accountable. They might not want to be here if they're forced to be held accountable. Then, so I want to touch on one more thing before I bring in our other guest, which is that you were talking about the courts and justice, and I don't want to get off in the weeds on this at all. I'm just going to say for the record that the courts in America, the entire court system, so-called legal system, is riddled with fraud and corruption. It is embarrassing. However, it can be fixed. That's another sort of thing that I am pursuing in various ways, and it's going to be hard because the corruption runs so deep and it's been there so long, it's so pervasive that and it all stems from kind of the same thing. It's the same thing that kind of Scott is doing, which is that you have to let people know what's going on before you can expect them to do anything. It's true that most people won't do anything. They won't get off the couch. They're very comfortable eating their box mac and cheese and watching TV, but a certain number of them will get involved. If you keep getting the message out, you've got to get the message in front of them. That's what we're doing. And that's why, thank God, we now have the internet to be able to use, because Scott and I do not live close to one another. However, here we are as if we were in the same room. That's an effective tool. And Scott is bringing awareness to these issues, as am I, as are other people. And once enough of us know these things are going on, we look at the court system, and when a judge does something that is unlawful, we can hold him accountable. We do have tools. Judges can be impeached. So, but again, I don't want to get off in the weeds. I'm just saying when Scott's talking about this, it's very valid. If you've never been to court, you've never been in the court system. I have, obviously Scott has. We're telling you, it is a jungle. It is a horrible, horrible jungle. It doesn't need to be, but it is. So we need to address that problem. But so, loved your monocast, okay, and I did see that, and I'm going to put the links in on each of these platforms for all of these things so that America, you can go, you can check it out for yourself. I strongly encourage you to do it. It only takes a little bit of time. If you have a few bucks, donate to Scott. I don't ask for money, but I do sometimes ask people to give money if they have it available. If you're struggling to put food on the table, don't do it. Scott's not starving, but he does have some expenses that are expenses that he should be helped out with. If everyone threw him $1 or $5, then he would have the resources that he needs to continue this fight. And his daughter represents our daughter. Again, if this can happen to his daughter, it can happen to my daughter. And that makes my blood boil. It makes me absolutely livid. Not going to stand for it. So you see at the bottom, the website is ouramazinggrace.net. Strongly encourage you all to go there, check it out, read, and judge for yourself. Do you think Scott's a fraud, liar, con man, or is he a true man of God and an angry father whose daughter was murdered? I'm right here telling you he is the latter, and I stand by him 100%. So my next guest is a good friend of mine. I consider him an ally and a brother, love him dearly. He has been through hell on earth in many ways and has emerged stronger than ever. He is a doctor here in Maine. His practice is Gabriel's Health Ministry. He and I have done many podcasts together. He and Scott are close, and I'm really thrilled that he could join me kind of on the fly tonight. So let us please welcome my friend and ally and brother. He is known as Dr. Paul Goslin. I call him Healer Paul Goslin because I think that's a better title. Paul, my friend, good to see you.
Thanks, Dana. Hey, Scott. I sent you a quick email the other day. You're the earthly father of, and when I hear stuff from her, I grew up without much, but my parents, despite the pain of growing up in a large family, which was very punishing, they taught us respect for life. And I'll tell you, when you have 9 in the family, and so you learn your lessons when you're a kid. And I called my mom. She's 93 the other day, and I told her, and she tortured me literally when I was a kid. But I told her how much I loved her. So when you approach what you're doing, Scott, is you approach it with love, and it's not so much justice, because God says you feed your enemies, you give them drink, but you let God put the hot coals on their head. Right. In other words, justice is God's. Right. So as you seek justice, and if anything, I become very wise with all the hell that I've gone through. And, I'm a physician, but I shouldn't have been a physician, Scott, because I was expelled from school for putting a gun to a priest's head, literally. And I have my reasons for doing that. You can imagine what that might be. So I joined the military, and I learned I liked taking care of people. And I was betrayed by the military. I ended up homeless for 3 years, and somehow got kicked out of schools like Duke University. And, I managed, and there was no way that God didn't have a hand in that, because, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a suit to wear when I applied to medical school. So I dressed up like a lobster, in my lobster apron, and I sent my application in, because I only had enough money for 2 applications, and one of them was in Maine. And so when I got there, Scott, I was befuddled, because it was the first or beginning of the second year they told me I had to take a mandatory class, one of the few mandatory classes you needed to graduate. And they said I had to take abortion class, and it was an all-day affair. Scott, yeah, I know. So at that point, I told them, and I'm a very intense guy. if I feel like I'm being threatened or you're threatening somebody, I literally threw somebody up against the wall when I was in medical residency because they were rude to a dying family's dying a dying patient's family, and it, you know, I wanted to get in there and do a lot more damage, but as it were, they promoted the guy that I threw up against the wall, and they sent me to the psych hospital, you know, to get a pill or something. This is what they do, and my whole life has been in psych hospitals because I you know, I believe in the sanctity of life. I mean, Jesus, you know, God said, you're here to multiply. God, I know that you've been delving into the Bible because that's where the answers are. And I'm not a Bible wearing guy. you know, I don't preach a Bible. I'm Catholic. I've had reasons to stay away from the church and everything else. But then I go into like ethics. Ethics isn't morals, right? That's ethics. That relates to the profession of medicine. And medicine, in my mind, is a death cult.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Paul, because that's one of the reasons I'm really glad you were able to join us, because some of the things we've been discussing regarding the things that are going on in hospitals and so forth. And, you know, you've talked very openly about this, and you and I have talked on when we podcast together about it. And I just want America to know that you know, these are things that are true that you don't know. You don't know what's going on in a hospital if you haven't been to one, if you haven't been admitted
there.
to one. That's what I'm saying. So,
and so
you know, and we're valid, right? Like what we were saying before is true, isn't it? Not to your knowledge.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. But they change as they go. You know, I mean, when I was 25, 30 to 30 years ago, I worked in a hospital. They didn't have hospitalists, okay? And malpractice was going through reform. So they've changed the malpractice from 6 years to 3 years. So they've had to slowly dwindle down this beautiful thing called, healing into this conglomeration of Babylon medicine, which is what they've done with law. Yes. Also. And the reason I'm I've been invested in law. I mean, I've had more lawyers and more charges against me by the Board of Medicine than you can ever imagine. And I was suing a hospital over the very thing you're talking about. It was a malpractice, and I was witness to it in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I am a doctor that works for this hospital, and I witnessed this. Next thing you know, I'm homeless again.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to if I can interrupt you for just 1 minute, because I want to make an important point here for people that do not know, that aren't aware of this. I met Paul because he had his so-called license taken from him by the so-called Maine Medical Board.
I was the first in the country.
No doubt at the behest of our treasonous governor, Janet Trafton Mills, who is a traitor and should be arrested for her treasonous behavior against we the people of Maine. And when I met Paul and talked to him, I'm a pretty good judge of character. I'm thinking, I don't see this guy being some menace that needs to be real. That's the gist of the argument. If you're taking someone's license away, clearly they must be doing some great harm or really posing a peril. And then I found out his supposed crimes. And the real thing, I'll tell you exactly what he did that made them mad. Okay. People who were trying to avoid the coerced toxic injection were contacting him and asking him if he would write a letter on their behalf stating that he felt it was medically unadvisable for them to have this, which he did. He didn't solicit them. He wasn't looking for it. He didn't ask anyone. He didn't offer this as a service on the webpage with a credit card slot. He did it because people were contacting him, asking him, could you please do this for me? I do not want to have to subject myself to this. So he did. And that's why the bastards came after him. That's why they took his license, because that's how the devil operates. You speak out the truth, and the devil comes after you with the brass knuckles and the whips, and you get threatened, coerced, ridiculed, mocked, condemned loudly. Well, I have always been a champion for that guy, that little guy that's being bullied. That I'm the guy that comes up and says,
"Be careful.
Who
Be
the
careful
are
what
you?
You wish for."
Well, you know what? Here I am, brother. Okay.
Scott,
And I
you know,
recorded when I went through the hearings, so-called hearings, where this idiotic so-called board debated whether to give Paul back his license or whether they had punished him severely
well,
enough. And they had no foundation of fact, no wrongdoing could be demonstrated in any way, shape, or form. And he was deprived of due process because he was deprived of his license and his ability to make a living at the pure discretion of a group of people without any just cause for it. It was BS. And if you watch this, some of them are on my YouTube channel or my BitChute channel, and you watch these clowns trying to justify what they did to him, it has absolutely no foundation. And at the end of it, they admitted it. They did. This is a fact. So now you won't hear about this on the main news because the mainstream media is entirely owned by the evil cabal. They don't want you to hear that this guy was vindicated and that the charges against him were unjust and unfounded. They don't want you to hear that Scott Schara has a valid case and that what happened to his daughter was a clear-cut case of murder, which it was. This is a fact. I'm not stating an opinion. I'm stating a fact. Everything is verifiable. So I'm sorry to do that to you, Paul. I know you were on a roll there, but I just wanted to make sure
I wasn't on a roll. I'm listening to what you say.
That's what you have experienced. That's why I'm with you. That's why I came to your defense, and we need to do this because Paul's rights are yours. It can happen to him. It can happen to you, and it's happened to other people in Maine too. Other doctors in Maine who have stood out against this agenda and defied the propaganda.
I don't know too many. I mean, I know Dr. Nass, and I talked to Dr. Nass about what the board would do. And she was smart enough to listen to me because I'm just low-hanging fruit. And you know what low-hanging fruit is in the Bible? That's who God says. Those are the people you take care of, the homeless, the people that don't have parents, whatever. This is what God asks us to do.
War veterans. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more than that. And the thing is, Scott, there are a few of us out there, and you got to understand. I know because I got my license back. Okay, after 8 months. Okay, but I was treating people with COVID. But during that period of time, I was visited by the FBI, and they had the Border Patrol with them. I didn't know why, but now I understand why. Because if they found anything like ivermectin, which I had all over the office, they were going to arrest me because the FBI can't come into a state and arrest you unless they have authority from another authority. And Border Patrol was 200 miles from the border I live. So, I mean, I understand it. These people aren't as smart as they think they are because God is an awful lot smarter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He uses guys like me to make a point. And I'm hoping I don't get, nearly killed again. But
it's a chance we all take. Look at all the whistleblowers at Boeing. For those of you who don't know what's going on, all the people that are whistleblowers at Boeing, people that have said Boeing might not be doing good things and we might be worried. Guess what happens to them? Suddenly they decide they're very despondent and they kill themselves.
Right. But yeah, that might be true. But also that it's easy to be a whistleblower when there's more than one.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is enough.
And I've been doing this on my own.
Protect people like you. That's why I helped you, because I see that if I don't help you, I just watch you get crucified.
This is about Scott.
It's going to happen.
I want Scott to know what he's getting into. Yeah, and I think it's a brilliant move. And I think God is giving us a way through your Babylon court system and going to the next level from the administrative courts, or I guess they call that malpractice. And you're going to civil, and then once that's done, you can bring criminal charges. I think that's brilliant.
Love to see it. Yeah,
but I sued.
Do you have a question for Scott? Because you were saying something before about you had a couple questions you wanted to ask him. So.
Well, I wanted Scott to know that that he hasn't been in this kind of a legal system, and to be honest with you, I probably had 10 different lawyers, 10 different times, and I've handled stuff with the board on my own, and there was no difference in the end. I had probably the best international lawyer in the country, Ron Jenkins, handed my last case. And the only reason that happened, Scott, was a miracle, because I don't have any money. I mean, I've made less than an average laborer in Maine my whole career in medicine because it's just not what I wanted to do. It wasn't about the money. If it had been, I'd kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's true, Scott. And I guess I looked at an ethics thing in 1973, some old pamphlets from the American Medical Association. And one of the things, and this is when I sued a hospital up north for what they did to a patient and then did to me. It says you're not to, it basically one of the ethical principles is you're never supposed to rat out another physician.
Yeah.
And, that's a secret society. Okay, that's what I regard medicine as. And I did not take the medical oath. I did not take the military oath. And I tried not to graduate. I just wanted to do something meaningful in life and be careful. I mean, the paved to hell is paved, with good intentions, right? And it could have been bad for me because I became a violent man in my own head. I mean, I just lived in anger because of what happened. And I guess, Scott, the case before the case for COVID, and if you look at my website, was they took my license away for 5 years because I reported a doctor who was drugging and raping his patients. And he still practices. And I was there. I have it on tape. I watched the whole thing. They brushed it under the rug before it even got to the public. So when you do the board stuff, there's somebody there who's an unelected official who decides what case goes, whether in front of the board. So some of these doctors don't even see the worst cases. Okay. I mean, this guy still practices in Maine. I just want you to know. And when that happened, the governor, the attorney general at the time, she sent a confidential informant to terrorize me. And he pulled a gun on me 3 times. I'm telling you, you've got to be careful what you wish for. And I just want you to be wise and always keep in prayer. Because if you're doing this in a haughty way or a prideful way, it will come up when, and you've done so well, Scott. You always do it out of love for your daughter. I can see that. And it breaks my heart, and I'm glad you're here. And, I was taking a nap right before Dana called and I've been thinking about this for a long time. I'd love to be there in the room when you depose these people.
That would be great.
Because I would give those doctors hell on earth.
I believe you would.
I mean,
so we're gonna try to move along a little bit. We're running a little bit late, and so but I appreciate you, Paul. I like how you put Gabriel down there as your name.
That's my middle name.
Paul's practice is called Gabriel's Health Ministry, and you can check him out, gabrielshealthministry.com. And Paul, thanks for joining us, my friend. I'm going to go ahead and bring you out, and we're going to finish up with Scott. Stay in touch. God bless you and keep you safe.
Paul, I really appreciate your words of wisdom. And that's right on. Your email that you sent last week, that was special. And I was really glad you sent it. So thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Believe me when I tell you, you're an inspiration to me too.
Absolutely.
More than any way you can imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Paul, God bless you, my friend.
Thanks.
Stay in touch. So, Scott, what is the agenda for you upcoming? I'm going to go ahead and post the links in all these pages to the things that you were discussing and when it's relevant to each one. So friends, come back, look in the comments. I'm going to post links there. Strongly urge you to check them out. What's the next step for you now, Scott?
It's interesting that you asked that. I was on an interview this morning and the lady asked the same thing. I've been a business owner for over half my life. And, before COVID happened, if somebody asked me the next step, I mean, I would have told you, that I have, the next year, the next 5 years, and even 10 years out, that's how I planned. My background before the current business that I have is my first business. I owned a CPA firm, and in the CPA firm, my role was the rainmaker. Then I did mergers and acquisitions, and then I did strategic planning. Then I did full-time strategic planning for 10 years. I mean, I'm a planner. So then COVID came, and I saw how they can shut down small businesses with the stroke of a pen. And I realized, oh my gosh, we can't be. I used to plan based on, if I could get a truckload of this, and you do the math and you see, okay, well, this makes sense to buy a truckload because we've got the storage space, and what amount are we making on our money here, and it was fun to run a business. Now I look at it as, they can shut me down anytime they want.
Can I pause you there for just one moment here, because this is something that's been kind of very high on my radar recently, is that people's use of words. I try to be very careful, very, very careful in the words I use and phrases I use. And those that would deprive us of our rights are very fond of creating phrases and ways of thinking that we sort of, without really thinking about it, repeat. And so the phrase you were using is, they can shut you down with a stroke of a pen. And I think what we want to say is, they can threaten and coerce you to obey their commands with the stroke of a pen, and force you to choose between shutting your business down because you say, okay, I'll shut my business down, or going, no, I'm not going to shut my business down, and telling them in no uncertain terms, you have no lawful authority to command
you're right
shut
on
my business down.
Absolutely, you're right.
Make them say it. Make them do it. Don't know. And we've seen people do it in America. There were a lot of people. There was a guy that was running a gym in New Jersey, and I've heard conflicting reports about various things there, but the base of it all was the fact that he just told them, no, I'm not going to shut my business down. You have no lawful authority to demand that I do it. And if we had all done it, it would have.
Yep, that's right on.
And your point is valid.
I really appreciate you correcting.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm saying, let's just tell it like it is, and let's not let them make us use these phrases like they can shut us down. They can threaten us. Yes.
Correct. They can threaten. And,
yes.
Grace's murder has gotten me prepared that, the idea of a threat and all those things, I've played all of this stuff through my mind. So I'm not afraid anymore. I mean, I'm not, that type of stuff. And I'm not planning on being threatened. God has put a hedge of protection around me the way I see it at this point. And I believe that is his intention relative to the path that we're on. But as far as what's next, what I know right now is next week our family's going to get deposed. The following week, the doctors and nurses are going to get deposed. But as I told the lady this morning, I never know what's going to happen. It is a strange thing. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Tucker Carlson is on my voicemail, because, there's so many doors that God has opened.
Yes,
Dana, that it is, it's actually mind blowing. It's been mind blowing, this path that we're on. So I don't know what for sure is going to happen next.
That's a fair answer. I appreciate that. And I had a job interview. The last job interview I had was quite a long time ago. I've had the same job for a long time. And the man interviewing me said, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And, they want you to say something grand and ambitious and, insightful or whatever. And this particular person I got along with very well. And he's now my current boss, and I like him a lot. And we had a good connection that day. And I looked right at him and I said, a few years ago, I might have told you where I thought I would be in 5 years. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be doing this. I thought I would own my own business. I thought I would be, fixing computers for the rest of my life, or doing computer support for the rest of my life. I said, but every time I get going in life, I get going somewhere and something happens, it just sends me in a completely different direction. And I've learned that it's best to go with that, what I call it, the cosmic currents, where God kind of wants us to go. It's where the flow takes us to a certain extent. And I find that when I work with it, I get farther. So I have no idea where I'll be in 5 years. None. I would have told you I was going to be married for the rest of my life to the woman I married. That didn't work out. I would have told you, I would be doing certain things I'm not doing. I would have told you I would never have done certain things that I am now doing. But I'm right where I need to be. And I tell myself that. I have friends and allies like you and Paul and Anna and Nicole from the Flame and Ohio Brett Ball. And, here in Maine, there's a lot of people that are very upset about the criminal actions of our government and are ready to do something about it. And I'm thrilled to be on board with that. Absolutely thrilled. I want every one of them to pay for their crimes. If you committed a crime, you take bribes or kickbacks or threaten or coerce people, or if you are an elected servant of we the people of Maine and the United States and every other state in the United States, and you've perjured your oath, by God, you should pay for that perjury. It's a crime and you should pay for it. And the people that murdered your daughter should be charged with murder, because the facts are very straightforward. They inflicted upon her things that resulted in her death. Period. So they need to be held accountable. And I will support you, as you know, in every way, every moment of every day. You are in my prayers, and that's not going to change. And I will be dancing victory dances at the end of all this when you are successful in your quest.
Well, thank you, Dana. That's very kind. And I appreciate you so much. I know that you've been on fire since the day that we met and you heard the story for the first time. A lot has happened. A lot has happened since then. I would have never thought I would become a researcher. And, what the things I've discovered, they change you. The idea of the blue pill, red pill, right? Would you want to know the truth or
a convenient lie?
Yeah, it's unreal where that has led me. And then to realize the entire red pill movement is really orchestrated by Satan. It's the less evil side. And, all this stuff, Grace would have, when mind-blowing things happen, she would go, it's like, and this is a regular occurrence. After I do these big research projects, I did the medical murder series. That was several hundred hours. I did the Matrix Revealed series. That was another several hundred hours. And these things they break me. I am exhausted after getting them done. But it's almost like my sense is I got to get this posted for other people when I'm gone, because, you get so much in your head, and, God gave me the gift of organizing facts and breaking it down to the simple so the common person can understand it. But these things, it's work. So I'm wondering what's going to be the next one. I really don't want to do another research project. I have nothing on my schedule right now.
Well, sometimes I was just literally talking to Paul about this just prior to the podcast, is that because I was doing a pretty regular series of podcasts with Paul, and I got to a point where I was just doing kind of too much. It was just too much, and I had to just take a step back and breathe and relax. And I've been absent for a while, and my viewers have commented on this, and that's sometimes what you need to do. You just need to take, a moment to smell the proverbial roses. I had marked my favorite.
That's my favorite picture.
And I got to tell you, your story about this, and I want you to tell it, because you had phrased this. I'll launch this and throw the ball into your court here by saying you were a self-professed lawn Nazi.
Yes, I want to see if I can find a picture here, because it goes hand in hand with that one. I took it last year. We'll just see if I can find it here.
Okay. Yes. So I personally, I absolutely love the daffodils. They're marvelous. I love them. And apparently Grace felt that way also.
Yeah, those are dandelions. We're in dandelion season right now. Yeah.
And so that really struck me, because we have a ton of them in Maine, and they're just so beautiful. And when I was a kid, I used to do what every kid does and blow the seeds off into the wind. And
Right.
yeah. And Scott was basically telling us all how he was a lawn Nazi, and he'd get right out there as soon as they poked their little heads above ground. He got right on that machine of buzzing death and cut those bastards down. Yeah.
Well, I did even worse than that. I chemically nuked them for. I want to show you. All right, I'm gonna show
Okay.
you. So I was a lawn Nazi. I stopped. When Grace picked that bouquet for Cindy, that was the day I stopped killing dandelions. Anyway, so then Grace. Well, I actually have to show. I really have to get the mindset here. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Take your time.
This will really help people connect the dots to my little buddy. All right.
Yeah.
We got one more.
And again, if you go to, for those of you watching, go to ourAmazingGrace.net, and you can see all this for yourself. And there's a whole bunch of great pictures of Grace on there. She was quite a character, I will say. And I'm really just so angry about what happened to
Okay.
her.
All right. I've got
it?
them both ready. Ready to go?
Yep.
All right. Let's see if we can make this happen. All right. So once Grace was old enough, I asked her, we have a 7-acre lawn, Dana. So this was no small deal, these dandelions. So
Yep.
I asked her, hey, now that you're old enough, you want to help Dad mow? And she said, yes. So we got her own little mower so she could help me. So this is her mowing.
Nice.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
All right. So then how she would mow, she was so cute. I taught her how to start it. She could do everything, pull the, I didn't have to do the PTO or anything. And the way this particular lawnmower works is that if you go in reverse, it shuts off the blades unless you pull this button up. And, she knew how to do everything.
Okay.
Right? But she wouldn't put it in reverse. She would, it was so cute how she would do it. So she would get, the radius on this thing is maybe, I don't know, maybe 10-foot radius. I don't know for sure, but she would take forever to get the last patch of grass because because you couldn't hit that last patch without going out and around. So I would tease her and here's so now what we do is we leave a patch of grass every year and we don't mow it.
Nice.
In honor of Grace. So this is the patch from last year. This was after the first dandelion mowing. We finally mowed. I left. And so now this patch, of course, grows real long. And so we leave this patch every year in honor of Grace because it would be the last patch. I'd carve out these acre sections for her to do in the lawn, but then as it got down, she would get it all done. And this last patch, she would burn 5 gallons of fuel just to do that last patch of grass.
God love you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dana.
My pleasure, always.
I love sharing that stuff about her. She was so cute.
Yeah, she was quite a treasure, and what happened to her was reprehensible, and those people need to be held accountable. It makes my blood boil, and I'm not a fan of confrontation, and all my life I've tried to avoid it. I've tried to avoid violent conflicts, but for some reason they always find me. And a lot of times, as you know about me, and most people do, I just speak my mind. I say what's on my mind, and let them deal with it as they will. And I really almost wish I could just look these people right in the eye and confront them with the naked truth and ask them. And especially if any one of these people doing these things, what I would do, I've done this many times. There's videos of me doing it, and I'll look at someone and I'll say, "Are you a man of God? Do you count yourself a man of God?" And then you can see them unraveling. You can see the ones, they know they're doing something wrong, and they're confronted with this cold, hard reality that they're behaving in an ungodly way. They know it, they feel it, they see it, they know you see it, they know God sees it. And, it's a powerful weapon. But I support you, as you know, and your cause will always do so, always echo your voice. Look forward to your updates, your emails. I love watching your podcasts. You're doing a great job. And obviously didn't know your daughter, but I am about as certain as I can be in my immortal soul that she is fiercely proud of you and watching you, and with great approval.
Oh, thanks. I see. Thank you very much for that, Dana. The first interview I was ever on was on Newsmax, and Jessica, our oldest, we had 3 children, but Travis took his life by suicide first. He was the oldest, and then Jessica. Well, anyway, she called me after the Newsmax live. It was my first interview, and it was live national TV. And anyway, she said, Grace is looking down on you and saying, "Way to go, earthly dad." I saw Paul wanted to know if I'd come to Maine, and the answer is yes. I've been doing way more traveling of late. I did a keynote speech in Minneapolis in March. I flew to Las Vegas in March to speak with 200 attorneys. Why would they want a dad, right? I am flying to Denver to speak with another legal group in June, and then to Florida later in June, because it's important. I mean, these live presentations, I think, are way better than Zoom, and I think we've got to do more of that so that people get a chance to interact. So,
well, I'm thrilled to hear it. We, as in a bunch of us here in Maine, are hosting an event in July on the 19th, 20th, and 21st called it's a combination of the 3rd annual Maine Freedom Rally, which I hosted the 2nd annual Maine Freedom Rally last year. Paul was one of my guests there and a speaker, along with my buddy Ohio Brett Ball. We're doing it again this year. July 19th is kind of my date. The next day is the Health Choice Maine Retreat, and it's all kind of one event. It's a joint event. And we would love to have you come out and talk if you are willing to do that and available. You're very, very welcome. So,
well, that's all. Will you send me an email with the particulars?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
All right.
And it's over a weekend?
Yes, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay. I mean, generally, those are going to be good because, I don't know how many more depositions there are going to be, but none of the depositions are in a weekend.
Okay. Well, I will send you the details for sure, and would love to have you speak on Friday at what is technically my event, or Saturday, or both would be great if you'd be willing to speak on Saturday at the Health Choice Maine retreat. So, and it should be a really good weekend. There's a lot of great people that are going to be there. We're going to have great speakers. I don't think you've met my friend Tiffany from Health Choice Maine, but she is a amazing, dynamic woman, one of the hardest working patriots I know. She would love to meet you, and it's going to be a good time. It's guaranteed going to be a powerful event. So hope you can make it. If you can, that'd be great. And believe me, America, you will be hearing about it because we will be live streaming, and we're going to be loud and proud. So join us. All right, Scott.
Great to see you again, Dana.
My pleasure, always. Thank you for coming, and God bless you in your struggle. You are in my prayers every time, my friend, and will continue to be, as well as you, Paul, Healer Paul. Love you, brother. God bless America, and God bless all of us in this dark time. Always seek the truth. Never accept anyone's word for anything. Seek truth, and seek, and you shall find. And as your Christian Bible says, you will know them by their fruits. So always ask questions. God bless.